A night to remember. Marcus Williams was no stranger to the hum of downtown Chicago. The Copper Fork, where he had worked for 3 years, was nestled in the heart of the city, its modern decor and warm lighting drawing in patrons from all walks of life. On any given night, Marcus could be seen expertly maneuvering between tables, balancing trays laden with culinary creations while greeting diners with his signature smile. But tonight felt different. The restaurant was alive with its usual weekend fervor. The chatter of conversations mingled with the clink of glasses and soft jazz playing in the background. Marcus had just finished setting a freshly polished table when a hostess signaled toward him, nodding in the direction of a new guest being wheeled into his section. His eyes met those of the guest, a woman in a wheelchair with a calm, commanding presence. She appeared to be in her mid-50s, her silver-streaked hair framing kind, perceptive eyes. Her outfit was understated but elegant, the type of attire that hinted at a story without revealing too much. Marcus felt a twinge of curiosity. There was something about her demeanor that stood out. He approached the table with his usual warm professionalism. "Good evening, ma'am. Welcome to the Copper Fork. My name is Marcus, and I'll be your server tonight. May I start you off with something to drink?" The woman looked up, her gaze settling on Marcus with an intensity that made him pause. For a fleeting second, it seemed as though she recognized him. Her expression softened into a smile. "Good evening, Marcus. A glass of Chardonnay would be lovely. Whatever you recommend." Marcus nodded and made his way to the bar. As he prepared her drink, he found himself glancing back at her table. She was sitting quietly, her hands resting on her lap, her gaze distant as though lost in thought. When he returned with the wine, she accepted it with a polite nod. "Thank you, Marcus," she said, her tone carrying a quiet gratitude. "Have you had a chance to look over the menu, or would you like a few more minutes?" he asked, his notepad ready. She smiled again, the kind of smile that seemed to see right through him. "I'll have the pan-seared scallops. And Marcus," she added, her voice lowering slightly, "if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to speak with you for a moment after you've placed my order." Her request caught him off guard. It wasn't every day that a customer asked to chat with their server. Marcus hesitated, glancing around at his other tables. The dinner rush was well underway, but his section was momentarily calm. "Of course, ma'am," he said, curiosity tinged in his voice. He quickly relayed her order to the kitchen and returned to her table. She gestured for him to sit, and after a brief moment of deliberation, he pulled out a chair. "Marcus," she began, her eyes meeting his, "I wanted to thank you. Not just for your service tonight, but for something far more significant. You did something years ago that changed my life, though I'm certain you don't remember." He blinked, caught off guard. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I don't think we've met before." She shook her head, her smile tinged with sadness. "No, we haven't. But 5 years ago, you saved my daughter's life." His mind reeled as he tried to grasp her words. "I don't understand." The woman reached into her purse and retrieved a neatly folded piece of paper. She smoothed it out on the table, revealing the weathered newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Local hero saves woman from burning car." There, staring back at him from a grainy photograph, was his own face, 5 years younger, soot-smudged and weary, yet determined. The image captured the moment he helped paramedics load an injured woman into an ambulance. "This is you, isn't it?" she asked, pointing to the photo. Marcus stared at the picture, his breath catching in his throat. The memories surged back with startling clarity. The shriek of tires, the acrid stench of burning rubber, the flames licking at the twisted metal of the car. He had been walking home from a late-night study session when he stumbled upon the wreck. Without hesitation, he had rushed to pull the unconscious driver from the car moments before it exploded. "Yes," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "That's me. But how do you?" Tears welled in her eyes. "Because the woman you saved that day was my daughter, Emily." For a moment, the world seemed to tilt on its axis. Marcus sat back in his chair, stunned. He had thought about that night many times over the years, but had never learned what became of the woman he had rescued. She was just 23. The woman continued, her voice trembling. A bright, vibrant young woman with her whole life ahead of her. If you hadn't been there, I would have lost her. Marcus found himself at a loss for words. He had always acted instinctively, never seeking recognition or thanks. Yet here, years later, sat the mother of the woman whose life he had saved, her gratitude radiating across the table. What happened to her? He asked hesitantly. She recovered, the woman said, a flicker of pride lighting up her face. It wasn't easy. There were surgeries, physical therapy, and dark days when we didn't know if she'd ever be the same. But she's thriving now. She's a teacher, inspiring children every day. Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. He had spent so much of his life striving for a sense of purpose, often doubting whether his actions made any real difference. And now, in this moment, he realized just how profound an impact a single act of courage could have. The woman reached across the table and placed a hand over his. I've been looking for you for years, Marcus. I wanted to tell you in person how much what you did means to me, to our family. You gave us hope when we thought it was lost. Tears threatened to spill from Marcus's eyes, but he blinked them back, managing the shaky smile. I didn't think. I just acted. I'm glad I could help. As their conversation unfolded, the bustling restaurant seemed to fade into the background. Marcus learned more about Emily's journey, her resilience, her determination, and her gratitude for the stranger who had risked everything to save her. The woman leaned back, a soft smile on her face. You may not have realized it then, Marcus, but you were a hero. And you still are. As he returned to his duties, Marcus felt a profound sense of fulfillment unlike anything he had ever experienced. The encounter stayed with him, a vivid reminder of the ripples a single selfless act could create. What Marcus didn't know was that this meeting was only the beginning of a journey that would change his life in ways he could never have imagined. Threads of fate. Marcus couldn't shake the encounter from his mind. Even after the woman left the restaurant, her words lingered with him like the resonance of a profound melody. She had slipped him a business card before departing, her hands trembling slightly as she pressed it into his. In case you ever need anything, she'd said, her voice gentle yet insistent. The card bore her name, Clara Bennett, and a brief description. Community advocate and founder of the Hope Alliance Foundation. Beneath it was her contact information. Marcus had read the card several times, trying to reconcile the stoic, elegant woman with the depth of gratitude she had expressed. For days afterward, Marcus found himself reflecting on the events of that night 5 years ago. At the time, it had seemed like a momentary lapse in an otherwise ordinary existence, a brief flash of bravery that had faded into the background noise of life. But Clara's words had reignited something in him, a realization that perhaps his life had more meaning than he had ever allowed himself to believe. That weekend, Marcus sat alone in his modest apartment on the south side of Chicago, staring at Clara's card on the small coffee table. The room was quiet, save for the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock. His mind replayed her parting words over and over. You're a hero, Marcus, and heroes deserve to know their worth. He hesitated before picking up his phone. He had no idea what he would say, but something deep within him urged him to reach out. After dialing the number, he listened as the phone rang, each tone a question of whether he was ready for whatever might come next. Hello. This is Clara Bennett, came the familiar voice, warm and composed. Hi, Miss Bennett, Marcus said, his voice tentative. This is Marcus Williams. We met at the Copper Fork a few days ago. Marcus. Her tone brightened instantly, carrying a note of genuine pleasure. I was hoping you'd call. How are you? I'm good, he said, though the truth was more complicated. I wanted to thank you for sharing your story with me. It meant a lot. The thanks should go to you, Clara replied, her voice softening. But I'm glad you called. There's something I'd like to discuss with you, if you're open to it." Marcus sat up straighter. "Of course. What is it?" "I run a nonprofit organization called the Hope Alliance Foundation," Clara began. "We focus on supporting underserved communities and recognizing everyday heroes. People like you who've made a difference in someone's life. We're hosting an event next month, and I'd like to invite you to be a guest speaker." Marcus's mind raced. A speaker? I've never done anything like that before. "You don't have to be a polished public speaker," Clara assured him. "Just share your story. What drove you to act that night, and how it shaped you. I think people would find it incredibly inspiring." The idea terrified him, but it also sparked a flicker of excitement. "I'll think about it," he said finally. "Take all the time you need," Clara replied. "And if you'd like, I can introduce you to some of the people involved in the foundation. I think you'd connect with them." They ended the call soon after, but Marcus was left with a decision that weighed heavily on his mind. He had always been comfortable fading into the background, working hard, and quietly doing his part. The thought of stepping into the spotlight, even for something noble, was daunting. A week later, Clara followed up with an invitation to visit the Hope Alliance Foundation headquarters. Marcus accepted, partly out of curiosity and partly out of a growing sense that this opportunity might lead to something meaningful. The foundation's office was located in a refurbished brick building on the city's west side. When Marcus arrived, he was greeted by a small but vibrant team of volunteers bustling about with purpose. The space was a mix of modern and homey, a blend of sleek desks and cozy reading nooks lined with inspirational books and artwork created by local children. Clara greeted him warmly, her silver-streaked hair catching the sunlight streaming through the large windows. She introduced him to several members of her team, each of whom had a unique story of resilience and hope. One man, Terrence, shared how the foundation had helped him rebuild his life after serving time in prison. Another woman, Anna, spoke about finding support through the foundation after losing her home in a fire. As Marcus listened, he began to see the ripple effects of the work Clara had dedicated herself to. The people here weren't just survivors. They were thriving, empowered by a community that believed in them. "Marcus," Clara said, breaking into his thoughts, "there's someone I'd like you to meet." She led him to a quiet corner where a young woman sat, her auburn hair cascading over her shoulders. She was reviewing a stack of papers but looked up as they approached. "Emily," Clara said softly, her voice brimming with pride. "This is Marcus Williams." Emily's eyes widened, and she stood, extending her hand with a smile that mirrored her mother's. "It's an honor to meet you, Marcus." Marcus shook her hand, still processing the moment. "The honor is mine," he said. Emily gestured for him to sit, and they spent the next hour talking. She shared her journey of recovery, the countless surgeries, the physical therapy, and the emotional toll of coming so close to death. But she also spoke of the strength she had discovered in herself and the gratitude she felt for the second chance Marcus had given her. "You didn't just save my life," Emily said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "You reminded me that there are people in this world willing to risk everything for someone they don't even know. That kind of bravery changes more than one life. It creates ripples." Marcus felt an unfamiliar warmth in his chest, a sense of purpose he hadn't realized he was missing. As he left the foundation that day, Clara walked him to the door. "Think about the event," she said, her tone gentle yet encouraging. "But no matter what you decide, know this. You have a story that matters, Marcus. And there's a place for you in this community if you're ready to take that step." Walking back to his car, Marcus felt a shift within him. For years, he had believed his life was defined by small, unremarkable moments. But now, he saw those moments as the building blocks of something far greater. The decision to speak at the event loomed before him, a challenge unlike any he had faced. But for the first time, he didn't feel alone. He had found a community. And perhaps in the process, he had begun to find himself. The courage to speak, The days leading up to the Hope Alliance Foundation's event were a whirlwind of emotions for Marcus. Each morning, he woke with a sense of anticipation that bordered on anxiety. Public speaking was uncharted territory, and he couldn't shake the fear of standing in front of a room full of strangers, sharing one of the most defining moments of his life. Still, the memory of Emily and Clara, their gratitude etched into their faces, pushed him forward. They believed in him, and that belief carried weight. It was time for him to step into a version of himself he hadn't yet imagined. A week before the event, Clara invited Marcus to visit her home for dinner. The invitation surprised him. He was accustomed to their formal interactions at the foundation. But Clara insisted, saying it was a chance for him to relax and prepare in a more personal setting. When Marcus arrived, he found her home to be warm and inviting. The modest brick house was filled with books, photographs, and small mementos that spoke of a life rich with experiences. Clara greeted him at the door with a wide smile, and Emily soon appeared, carrying a tray of lemonade. Over dinner, they shared stories that ranged from lighthearted to deeply personal. Clara recounted her early days founding the Hope Alliance Foundation, describing the struggle of building something meaningful from the ground up. Emily spoke of her teaching career and the joy she found in helping children discover their potential. As the evening unfolded, Marcus felt an unexpected sense of ease. These were people who understood the power of resilience and the value of second chances. By the time dessert was served, a rich chocolate cake Clara claimed was her grandmother's recipe, Marcus felt emboldened enough to voice his doubts. "I'm not sure I'm the right person for this," he admitted, setting his fork down. "I don't even know where to start." Clara leaned forward, her gaze steady. "Start with the truth, Marcus. People don't expect perfection, they want authenticity. Tell them what you felt that night, why you acted, and how it's shaped you since." Emily chimed in. "You've already inspired me and my mom. Imagine how many more people you could reach." Their words stayed with Marcus long after he left. He spent the next few days writing and rewriting his speech, each draft feeling either too clinical or too raw. Eventually, he stopped trying to craft something perfect and decided to speak from the heart. The day of the event arrived. The venue, a community center in the heart of Chicago, was abuzz with activity. Volunteers hurried to set up chairs and arrange displays showcasing the foundation's work. Marcus arrived early, his stomach twisting in knots. Clara greeted him with a reassuring smile. "You're going to do great," she said, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. The audience began to trickle in. Families, local leaders, and individuals whose lives had been touched by the foundation. As the room filled, Marcus scanned the faces, recognizing some from his visits to the foundation. Their presence was a reminder that this wasn't about him. It was about the power of shared experiences and the strength of community. When it was finally time for him to speak, Marcus walked onto the small stage, his heart pounding in his chest. The microphone felt foreign in his hand, and for a moment, he questioned whether he could go through with it. But then he caught sight of Clara and Emily in the front row, their expressions filled with encouragement. He took a deep breath and began. "I was just a college student that night," Marcus started, his voice steady despite the quiver in his hands. "I was walking home from the library, exhausted and thinking about an exam I had the next day. Then I heard it, the screech of tires, the crash of metal. When I saw the car engulfed in flames, I didn't think. I just ran. I remember the heat on my face, the sound of glass cracking, and the weight of the woman as I pulled her from the wreckage. I didn't even know her name until recently." He paused, glancing at Emily, who gave him a small nod. "Her name is Emily Bennett, and she's sitting right here tonight. She's the reason I'm standing before you." The audience erupted in applause, the sound filling the room with energy. Marcus took another deep breath, feeling the surge of confidence. "I didn't act because I thought I was brave. I acted because I couldn't imagine walking away. I didn't know what would happen after that night, but now I do. Emily survived, and she's thriving. That's what this foundation is about, helping people survive and thrive. Each of us has the power to make a difference, even if we don't realize it at the time. You don't have to pull someone from a burning car to be a hero. Sometimes it's about listening, lending a hand, or believing in someone when they can't believe in themselves. He paused, his voice thick with emotion. I'm standing here tonight because someone believed in me. Clara Bennett, her team, and this foundation. They reminded me that even the smallest actions can create ripples that change lives. As he concluded, the audience gave him a standing ovation. Marcus felt a wave of relief and pride wash over him. For the first time, he understood the impact of his story, not just on those who heard it, but on himself. After the event, people approached him, sharing their own stories of resilience and gratitude. One young man spoke of finding the courage to return to school after years of self-doubt. A woman thanked Marcus for reminding her of the importance of small acts of kindness. Clara and Emily stood nearby, watching with pride as Marcus connected with the crowd. You did it, Clara said when the room finally began to empty. Marcus smiled, his earlier nerves replaced by a newfound sense of purpose. I think I'm starting to understand what you meant about ripples. Clara's eyes sparkled. This is just the beginning, Marcus. You have so much more to give. As he left the venue that night, Marcus felt a sense of clarity he hadn't known in years. His journey was far from over, but for the first time, he was ready to embrace it. A new chapter. The morning after the event, Marcus woke with an unfamiliar feeling coursing through him. An exhilarating mix of pride, purpose, and possibility. For years, he had walked through life with a sense of resignation, accepting the hand he had been dealt without question. But now, after standing before an audience and sharing his story, he felt as though a door had opened to a world he never knew existed. He replayed the moments in his mind. The warmth of the applause, the heartfelt conversations with attendees, and the pride in Clara and Emily's eyes. For the first time in his life, Marcus felt seen, not just for what he had done that fateful night, but for who he was and the potential he carried. The following week, Clara called Marcus to thank him again and share the overwhelmingly positive feedback from the event. You were a hit, Marcus, she said. People are still talking about your story. In fact, we've had several donors express interest in supporting new programs inspired by your speech. Marcus was stunned. Programs? What kind of programs? Mentorship initiatives, outreach efforts, and community workshops focused on resilience and leadership, Clara explained. Your story reminded people of the power of individual action, and they want to build on that momentum. But she hesitated for a moment. I was hoping you'd consider taking a more active role in these efforts. Marcus's brow furrowed. Active role? You mean volunteering? More than that, Clara said. I'd like you to join our team, full-time. Your story and your heart resonate with people in a way that's rare. I believe you could help us expand our reach and inspire even more lives. Marcus sat in stunned silence, the weight of her words sinking in. Joining the foundation full-time would mean leaving his job at the Copper Fork, a job that, while not ideal, provided stability. Yet the thought of working for something greater than himself was tempting. I don't know, Clara, he said finally. This is a big decision. I'd need some time to think about it. Take all the time you need, Clara replied, her tone understanding. But know this, the door is always open. That evening, Marcus found himself sitting on his small balcony, gazing out at the Chicago skyline. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. Could he really leave the life he had known for something so uncertain? He thought back to his childhood on the south side of Chicago. His parents had worked tirelessly to provide for him and his siblings, instilling in him a deep sense of responsibility. His father, a construction worker, and his mother, a nurse, had taught him the value of hard work and stability. The idea of walking away from a steady paycheck felt almost reckless. Yet, as he reflected on his journey, he realized that stability hadn't brought him fulfillment. The moment he felt most alive, The moment he felt like his actions truly mattered wasn't during his shifts at the restaurant, but in the connections he had made through the foundation. The next morning, Marcus called Clara. "I'm in," he said, his voice steady. "I don't know exactly what I can offer, but I want to try." Marcus's first weeks at the Hope Alliance Foundation were a whirlwind of learning and growth. Clara wasted no time integrating him into the team, assigning him to oversee the development of a new mentorship program aimed at helping young adults in underserved communities. The program, called Pathways to Purpose, was designed to connect young people with mentors who could guide them through challenges and inspire them to pursue their dreams. Marcus worked closely with Clara, Emily, and a team of dedicated volunteers to shape the program's vision. One of Marcus's first tasks was to recruit mentors. He reached out to friends, former colleagues, and even regulars from the Copper Fork, sharing the foundation's mission and inviting them to get involved. To his surprise, many agreed, eager to contribute to something meaningful. As the program began to take shape, Marcus found himself drawing on his own experiences. He thought about the mentors he had encountered in his life, teachers, coaches, and even the strangers who had offered words of encouragement when he needed them most. He realized that mentorship wasn't about having all the answers. It was about showing up, listening, and believing in someone's potential. One afternoon, while reviewing applications for the program, Marcus came across a name that caught his eye: Jamal Henderson. Jamal was a 16-year-old from the South Side, described in his application as bright but struggling to stay motivated. He lived with his grandmother and had dreams of becoming an architect, but lacked the resources and support to pursue them. Reading Jamal's story, Marcus felt an immediate connection. It was as if he were looking at a younger version of himself. Determined to help, he reached out to Jamal and arranged to meet him at the foundation. When they met, Marcus was struck by Jamal's intelligence and curiosity. Though reserved at first, Jamal opened up as they talked about his aspirations, his challenges, and his fear of failure. "I don't think I'm good enough," Jamal admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Marcus leaned forward, meeting his gaze. "I know that feeling," he said. "But let me tell you something. You are good enough. You just need someone to remind you of that when you forget." From that day on, Marcus became more than a mentor to Jamal. He became an advocate, helping him navigate school, connect with resources, and even tour architectural firms. Watching Jamal's confidence grow was one of the most rewarding experiences of Marcus's life. As Pathways to Purpose launched, Marcus saw the program's impact ripple through the community. Students who once felt invisible were now thriving, supported by mentors who believed in them. The program attracted attention from local media and even garnered additional funding, allowing the foundation to expand its reach. Through it all, Marcus felt a profound sense of fulfillment. For the first time, he wasn't just working a job, he was living his purpose. One evening after a long day at the foundation, Marcus stood in the center's quiet lobby, reflecting on how far he had come. Clara approached, her eyes filled with pride. "You've found your place, haven't you?" she asked. Marcus nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "I think I have." Clara placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're creating ripples, Marcus, and those ripples are going to change lives for years to come." As he locked up the building that night, Marcus felt a sense of peace he hadn't known before. He had taken a leap of faith, and in doing so, he had discovered not just his purpose, but a community that believed in him as much as he believed in them. Building bridges. Marcus's work at the Hope Alliance Foundation had become more than a job. It was a calling. The Pathways to Purpose program had exceeded all expectations, creating a thriving network of mentors and mentees who were transforming their lives and their communities. Marcus's days were filled with purpose, but he couldn't help but feel there was more he could do to expand the foundation's reach. One afternoon, Clara approached Marcus in her office, holding a folder thick with documents. She gestured for him to sit. "Marcus, I've been thinking about the future of the foundation," she began. "You've brought a fresh perspective to our work, and I believe you're ready for the next step." Marcus raised an eyebrow, curious but cautious. "What do you mean?" "We're launching a pilot program," Clara explained. "A community hub in one of the neighborhoods that need us most. It will serve as a space for mentorship, workshops, and resources. A physical representation of everything we stand for, and I want you to lead it." Marcus's heart raced. The idea was bold and ambitious, but it also carried immense responsibility. He thought about the neighborhoods he had grown up in, places where opportunities were scarce and hope even scarcer. "Why me?" he asked, his voice laced with humility. "Because you understand these communities," Clara said firmly. "You've lived their struggles and their triumphs. You've proven that you can inspire others, and I know you'll pour your heart into this." After a long pause, Marcus nodded. "If you believe in me, then I'll do it." The next few months were a blur of planning and preparation. Marcus immersed himself in the project, collaborating with local leaders, architects, and volunteers to design a space that would meet the community's needs. They chose an abandoned building in Marcus's old neighborhood, a structure that had long symbolized neglect, but now held the promise of renewal. The transformation was nothing short of miraculous. Marcus worked tirelessly, overseeing renovations and ensuring the building was more than just functional. It needed to feel welcoming, a place where anyone could walk in and feel valued. The center featured classrooms for workshops, a computer lab, a library stocked with donated books, and even a small cafe where locals could gather. At the heart of the building was a mural painted by local artists, depicting scenes of resilience and unity. When the center finally opened its doors, it was christened the Williams Bennett Community Hub, a nod to Marcus's pivotal role and the Bennett family's unwavering support. The grand opening drew a crowd from all corners of the city. Clara and Emily stood by Marcus's side as he cut the ribbon, their smiles reflecting the pride they felt in him. As the community poured into the space, Marcus felt a surge of emotion. This wasn't just a building. It was a beacon of hope. Over the next few weeks, the hub quickly became a lifeline for the neighborhood. Adults attended job training workshops, children flocked to after-school programs, and young entrepreneurs found guidance to start their own businesses. One of the hub's most popular programs was the Second Chances Initiative, inspired by Marcus's story. It offered support to individuals re-entering society after incarceration, providing them with mentorship, job placement services, and counseling. The program gave people the tools to rebuild their lives, and Marcus personally mentored several participants. One of those participants was Carlos, a man in his early 30s who had spent 5 years in prison for a nonviolent offense. Carlos was determined to turn his life around but struggled to find employment due to his record. Marcus saw his potential immediately. "I've been where you are," Marcus told him during their first meeting. "Feeling like the world has given up on you. But let me tell you something, it hasn't. You just need someone to believe in you." Under Marcus's guidance, Carlos secured a job with a local construction company and began taking night classes to earn his high school diploma. Watching Carlos succeed reminded Marcus of the transformative power of opportunity. As the hub flourished, Marcus began to notice a shift in the community. The streets felt safer, the residents more connected. People who had once walked with their heads down now greeted each other with smiles and waves. One day, Marcus received a call from Jamal, the young man he had mentored through the foundation. Jamal had graduated high school with honors and been accepted into an architecture program at a prestigious university. "I couldn't have done it without you, Marcus," Jamal said, his voice filled with gratitude. Marcus felt a lump in his throat. "You did the work, Jamal. I just showed you the door. You had to walk through it." Jamal laughed. "Well, thank you for showing me. And don't worry. I'll come back and design the next community hub for you." Despite the hub's success, Marcus knew there was still work to be done. One evening, he sat in his office, reviewing reports and brainstorming ideas for future initiatives. Clara knocked softly on the door before entering, a knowing smile on her face. "You've done something incredible here, Marcus," she said, taking the seat across from him. "It's not just me," Marcus replied. "It's the community. They've embraced this place and made it their own." Clara nodded. "That's true. But it wouldn't have happened without your leadership. You've built more than a center. You've built bridges. Between people, between dreams and reality." As Clara left, Marcus leaned back in his chair, reflecting on her words. He had started this journey with doubts and fears, uncertain if he had what it took to make a difference. Now he saw how far he had come, not just as a leader, but as a person. The Williams Bennett Community Hub had become a symbol of what was possible when courage, compassion, and community came together. And for Marcus, it was only the beginning.